Hey, welcome to worshiptutorials.com. In this video, I want to tell you all about one of my new favorite pieces of gear, something that will help us unlock the absolute potential from our tube amplifiers. I'm talking about the Universal Audio Aux Box. But before we go any further, I want to just show you what this thing can sound like. We're going to use a variety of tube amps. Bradford is going to play through his board as well to show you what it does as far as how it takes effects and that kind of thing. Check it out. Okay, so in a nutshell, what the aux does is it acts as a load box for your tube amplifier. You cannot just plug the output of a tube amp into a recording interface or a mixer, anything like that. You will run the risk of damaging your tube amp and other equipment as well. So this receives the load from the tube amp. It does microphone and speaker cabinet modeling, as well as some other effects, and you can also just use it as an attenuator to knock down the just deafening volume levels that you get from some tube amps. All right, I want to give you just a quick overview of the unit itself and what you can do as far as inputs and outputs. So we're looking at the back of this thing. First thing you will notice is this input with a big red ring around it. This is where you plug the output from the head of your tube amp, or if you just have a head, the output into this. So from there, once you plug it in, and one thing I love about the aux is you can select. So amplifiers will have a different ohm output. You can select 4 ohms, 8 ohms, or 16 ohms, depending on what amp you are using. One of the things that sets this apart from many of the other similar types of products on the market. From there, you can then run this output to a speaker cabinet. So you can just run it to, if you have a combo, you can just splice it right back into the speaker in the combo. You can run it to a different amp, anything like that. You have line outs, stereo, left and right. We'll talk about the stereo effects that are built into this thing soon. You have USB connections, so you can do firmware updates, that kind of thing. Power. You have a foot switch and SPDIF out. So 2 different ways that you can get the output from what this thing can give you into a recording interface or a mixing desk, anything like that. And you have a foot switch as well, so you can control the onboard effects. Moving on to the front of the panel, you have a rig selector. We'll talk about that here in a bit when it comes to the different rigs you can set up. inside of this thing. You have a room control that has to do with the mic modeling and effects that you can do with it. You have a speaker volume, so this will act as an attenuator, and so you can adjust the level that goes to the speaker cab that you have this thing plugged into, and then you have a line out level that adjusts the amount of level coming out of the line outputs, and then you have a headphone level and a headphone out, so you can just use this with a pair of headphones. So before we go any further, I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Kevin and Vintage King. Vintage King and Universal Audio together actually sent us this aux box to use as sort of a loaner, so we can make some content, make some videos with it. After about a week, I knew that I had to have this thing in here at Worship Tutorials, so I just sent I sent Vintage King an email. I'm like, I'm gonna buy this. How much do I owe you? I'm not sending it back. So I did end up purchasing this to use personally, but Vintage King and Universal Audio sent this our way so we could check it out. So huge thank you. If you're looking to get one of these, or if you need any like pro audio gear, Vintage King is a good way to go. Great customer service, great people there. Kevin Shuck, one of the people there at Vintage King, sort of our contact, he actually went above and beyond, and I'm going to be using this Tyler HM30 amplifier for part of this demo. This is actually Kevin's personal amp that he sent to us. He's a fan of the channel. Thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go through sort of the different microphone, speaker, cabinet modeling options that they have, as well as some of the effects, so you can see everything what this aux box can do for you, sort of as a direct solution, whether you're recording or whether you're playing live and you want to use your tube amp, but you want a direct output. I'm going to show you everything it can do. And to do that, I'm going to be using this magically appeared, this Telecaster, Thinline style Tele with Lambertones Blondies. And we're going to be running into channel 2, the EF86 channel of the Tyler HM30. Okay, so we're connected to the aux via the software editor that ships with it that you can download from Universal Audio. There's a desktop application, and you can get it for iOS. It works with an iPad. I don't think it works with an iPhone, but it works with an iPad as well. I just connect to it from the computer, and you can do everything from there. So taking a look at it, this is one of my presets using a Vox AC30 cabinet, which is the Ace, the 212 Ace top. So you can pick the cabinet that you want, and you can see here they have quite a list. We're going to go through a lot of those options here in a bit. Just walking through the editor, you can pick the wattage. So if you have a 50 watt or lower amp, you can pick the 50 watt. If you have a higher watt amp, you can pick the 100 watt. Of course, you can mix and match if you'd like to get different types of sounds. I found for the amps that I have here at Worship Tutorials, the 50 watt setting always sounds the best because I don't have anything over 50. The speaker drive control will sort of simulate how broken in those speakers are. So the higher up you go, you get like a more broken in type of a speaker, and you can get more of that speaker drive type of a thing as you push it. I found kind of like right in here is the sweet spot. They feel a little like brand new speakers, like kind of stiff if you're down here. I like to have it right about here. Next, you get into the microphone section. So you have 3 mic options. I'll speak a bit about how the aux is really different than an IR. And this is where it kind of unlocks it as far as speaker options go, or sorry, microphone options go. So you can pick from their list of microphones. You've got a 57, which is an SM57, a dynamic 421, a 121 ribbon, a 160 ribbon, a condenser 67, a condenser 414. Then you can just use the direct output, and this allows you to use it with IRs. If you'd like to, I'll talk more about that in a little while here in this video. But I've chosen just the classic Royer 121 and SM50, Shure SM57 combo. It works really well. You can then choose whether you want your mics on or off axis. You can have the high pass filter, so you can roll off some of that low end if you'd like. There's an EQ for each mic. You can do a graphic or a touch EQ as they call it, with low and high pass filters built in. And then you have a room mic setting. This is some of the secret sauce in the aux that I really love. And so for the room mic setting, and I'll demonstrate what all this sounds like here in just a bit, you can get ribbon stereo room mics, condenser stereo room mics, or you can get, they model 4 different mics, 2 different condensers. That looks like a Manley. This one looks like a Neumann. Then you've got ribbon that looks like an RCA, and that one looks like a Royer. So there you go. Those are the ribbon or the microphone options for the room mics. Ribbon's going to be warmer. Condenser's going to have a lot more sort of clarity and brightness to them. And then you get into what they call the master section, where you have different effects. And if you're familiar with Universal Audio at all, you know that the effects, like all of their stuff, sounds just spectacular. So I have a little bit of an EQ here. It's the same sort of EQ that you get on each mic channel, including the room mics. I typically turn that off unless I really hear something that I want to add or remove. Then there is an 1176 compressor built in, and Universal Audio's 1176 is very, very good. So this is their 1176 compressor. I love having compression after it simulates like a well-recorded electric guitar sound, and this compressor has a really good feel and tone to it. I'll demonstrate it here in a bit. There's a delay section, which it includes delay and modulation. Again, we'll go through what all you can do with that. And then you have a plate reverb. So aux will work as sort of an effects processor as well, moving along through the editor. Here, if you hit this, you can save presets, which here you can see I've saved a bunch. There are, of course, factory presets that you can pull up if you'd like. In the assignment section, I talked earlier about, like, you have that rig knob on the front of the aux. You can assign your 6 favorite rigs to each of those settings. So, like, say you have 3 or 4 amps that you love, and you have like different, aux settings for each one. You can assign, 1, 2, 3, 4 for each amp. Or if you, like me, you come up with, multiple different cab and mic combination settings that sound great with the amps that you have, you can just get your favorites right on the front panel. I haven't really messed with this, so this is kind of how it comes stock. You can then, remember, on the back panel there's an input for a foot switch. It accepts any kind of TRS switch. You can have a 3-button switch, and then you can assign those buttons, and you can do quite a bit with them. So you can assign them to turn on or off, different effects. It's like you can have button 1 turn your compressor on and off, button 2 can turn the EQ on, button 3 can turn delay and reverb on and off. So you can have your buttons do, fairly complicated, settings with different foot switches. This can be great if you don't really need an always-on type of a reverb pedal if you're going to use the aux, because the plate reverb on here sounds awesome. Same with compression if you want to do it that way. Modulation actually works really well. You can use this as a chorus or something like that. It just gives you more options. It really unlocks extra potential. It's more than just a load box, attenuator, speaker, cabinet, microphone, modeling setup. Let's just go through some sounds. So again, this is the Tyler HM30 EF86 channel running into the aux. Aux is going direct into the Apollo, also from Universal Audio right here. Running the AC30 cabinet with Silver Bell speakers, Royer 121, SM57 condenser stereo mics. Sounds like this. Okay, so let's go through just the different mic options and hear how they sound. I'm going to start with the 121 because that's what I had. I've soloed this channel, and then I'm just going to flip through the mics and sort of give you an idea of how they change the tone, starting with the 121. And direct, if you've never heard just the direct output of an amp, it's gross. Sounds like this. Yikes! All right, I really liked the 160 on its own. I feel like it's got that warmth of a ribbon mic. I actually have a 121, a 57, and a 160. I feel like these do a really good emulation of how those mics sound. 160 is a favorite. So again, it sounds like this. I'm going to show you the on-off axis options and the EQ, what you can do with it. All right. So as you can see, you have a lot of sort of tonal shaping options for each individual microphone, and again, you have that for the master section. It's a really good, very musical sounding EQ as well. It sounds great, as you would expect from Universal Audio. They know what they're doing, like emulating EQs and stuff like that. As you can imagine though, you can come up with just all kinds of different microphone options. You can then pan those microphones and create a stereo image from the mics themselves. You'd have to run 2 auxes, by the way, if you want a stereo amp setup. If you have 2 amps, you would need 2 aux boxes to get stereo amps. But you can get some stereo imaging from the microphones and from the effects, which we are going to see here in just a bit. So again, here's my 121-57 combo. I'm going to show you what this room mic setting does as you pull it in and out. So as you can hear, it just added this sense of, it's kind of like a reverb, but a little different. It really gives you the sense of playing with an amp in a room, like just the tube amp in front of you, that sense of space. And I mentioned that there are certain things about this that really set it apart from just using IRs, and this would be one of them. This room mic setting sounds really, really cool if you blend it in. I blended a lot in. I'll show you what it sounds like just the room mic, just soloed. So on its own, that sound is a little gross, and you might think, why would I want that? But it really sounds good when you blend it in with the direct signal. All right, let's talk about the different cabinets. So you've got a bunch of options here. Again, I'm going to be running this Tyler into all these things, so they're not. Some of them aren't going to sound great because it's not really the kind of amp that they're designed for. But I'll just go through some favorites. So this 10-inch is going to be kind of like they call it this open back 10-inch speaker, but it's going to sound like a small amp. 1x12 25 GB would be a greenback, a Celestion 25, maybe G12 25 watt. Lot more mid-range with that one. 1x12 Blue 15. I'm just going to cycle through these so you can hear them. 'This Ace Top is kind of where we started. The boutique one is one of my favorites. I think that I've read that this is modeled on like a Dumble. Maybe, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's super warm, really good. 65 watt British style Celestion, maybe G12M 65, maybe, I don't know. 410 B-Man, that's got to be a Bassman. 410, I would guess Jensen P10R speakers, just my guess. 412 GB 25 thick. This is probably like a Marshall 412 style cabinet. The 412 GB 30, definitely going to be a Marshall style 412 cabinet. 410 UK V30, so we're talking Celestion V30 speakers here. That's the CA V30. I would guess that's a Mesa Boogie Celestion or V30 speakers. Alright, so we went through all of the different speaker cabinet options. And as you notice, one thing I really like about this as well, as you change the speaker cabinets, once you get your mic sort of section dialed in, it doesn't change that. So you're basically just auditioning different speakers with the mic settings that you like. One thing that I came away with, and it could be just this amp is a really great sounding amp, they all sound pretty good. Like some of them I would hear and I'm like, yeah, I like that one better than that one. But depending on the sound you're going for, I think they all sound really great. They're just different. And of course you can match the style of cabinet and speaker to the style that you would typically use with whatever amp you're using. But they really have just a wide range of cabinet styles and speaker styles. There's not really anything that I think to myself that is not represented here inside of the aux that you would typically use. You know, they've got classic rock type of stuff. They've got the Vox AC kind of stuff. They've got the small amp combo kind of thing. They've got the rock, you know, the big 412 cabinets, different speaker types. Everything is here and it all sounds really, really good. Let's go through this master section and talk about the different effects. And again, you can they're foot switchable. You can turn them on and off on your board if you'd like. First thing is you hit that EQ. Again, we talked about that earlier. I have that on just to taste. Let's talk about this compressor. So I've got it on. And if you're familiar with an 1176 style compressor, it works like a great 1176 would. The input will control how hard you're driving the compressor, how much compression you're using. The output level is just like how much output you're giving it. So you can set that so that it's sort of at unity if you'd like, or you can give it a little bit of a push, or you can pull back if you want. Attack is the time that it takes for the compressor to squeeze onto the note. Release is how long it takes the compressor to let go of it when you have compressed something. And then the ratio, you can go 4, 8, 12, or 20. So 4 would be sort of more gentle compression. 8 and 12 are a little more heavy-handed, and 20:1 would be more like a limiter than a compressor. And then your metering, you can see how much gain reduction you're getting. So I have this set up as a really sort of a subtle type of a compression. So you can tell it's not doing a whole lot. It's just kind of evening everything out a little bit. If you compress a lot more, so now you can see we're just slamming this thing with a little bit of volume increase. But if I play lightly with it on and off, you'll really hear what it's doing. So you can see with it on, with that heavier type of a compression, it'll bring up your lows and bring down your highs. I like to say you make my valleys high and my mountains low compression. There you go. I don't know, is that a church joke? I don't know what that was. All right, that's what a compressor can do for you. I really just like to run it more of a subtle compression on the end of the chain. It just kind of glues everything together a little bit. A compressor will limit your dynamic range, which may or may not be what you want with your guitar playing, but it's here if you want it, and you can foot switch it on and off as an effect. Okay, next let's move on to the delay block. So the first thing you can do when you turn this on, you can just set the delay, just regular, you know, just do. Now, on your delay, you can have modulation. A lot. You can change the type of modulation, sine, you know, all these different kind of chorus type of modulations. You can have high or low cut, so you can really warm up your delay. So you get this really analog type of a sound. You can also cut the low out of it. So see, all that low end is gone. Then you can make it sort of a full range delay if you want. Now you can unlink your delays right here and create like a stereo type of a delay. Sounds like this. If you wanted to work out the time, you could make rhythmic type of delays. One thing the delay doesn't have, at least that I have found, there's no type of tap tempo. I really think that this would be cool with a tap tempo, but there's no input for a tap. But even on the delay itself, you can't tap it in to get repeats tapped, you know, in time. That would really work well for like a rhythmic type of a delay. So you could have like quarter and dot at eighth, for example. As it is, you have to sort of work out the milliseconds to get that. And if you link them with different times, you can link them and keep that ratio. So you can also use this delay block as a chorus or a flanger. Now I'm going to rely on some presets that are in here to give you some of these types of sounds. So you go to the modulation. Some of these are just really, really great. The 70s warm chorus mono. By the way, stereo chorus modulation. Man, once you go stereo, it's hard to go back to mono. 80s studio chorus. I mean, we could go on and on through the presets. They sound really lush, really good. Delay has a lot of good presets. The memory Deuterino, I love it when these companies come up with, like, you can't say Memory Man because that's trademark, but you can say memory Deuterino. Alright, so to give you an idea of some of the weird that you can do with this, here is a preset called Night Terrors. Let's see what they're doing here. They've got a delay time, 277 milliseconds, tons of modulation on it, and you can see it's 100% wet. So that means the input strum won't come through. Alright, that's enough. Moving on to plate reverb. Now this is just a plate reverb. There aren't any kind of different reverb algorithms that you can get. This is a really great sounding reverb, so... So here you have reverb time. So you can get pretty ambient with it. You have control over the treble and the bass, so I like to roll a little bit of highs off. But you can push it. Okay, same with bass. Alright, so you've got a low cut. So you have a bass control, which controls how much low end is in the reverb, but you also have a low cut, so you can roll lows out of it, either off 90 hertz or 180 hertz. You have pre-delay, which determines how long it takes for the reverb to sort of come in. Hear that? That kind of thing. So a lot of control over the reverb, and then of course the mix, which you can go, to Unity, or let's look at some of these presets. 50s twang. Night Terrors. This was weird with delay. Let's see how weird it is for reverb. Warm Clouds. That sounds good. Like a big kind of an ambient warm reverb. So that was a deep dive into the whole thing you can do with the editor. All the different sounds that you can put together with some really boring playing. Why don't you listen to some more interesting playing? Thank you, Bradford. Bradford, do you care to comment on how we have the PRS Mark Tremonti amp sitting on top of a Princeton reverb over here?
I do not care to comment.
I just think it's funny.
It is actually pretty funny.
I want to wrap this video up with a few thoughts. First, the things that I love about the unit, the way it sounds. I think it sounds fantastic. We might be able to do this in a future video. If you want us to, let us know. I've compared it to miking a cabinet. I don't have the exact cabinets that are in the aux with the speakers. I do have some of the same exact mics that are in there. So presumably if I had the same cabinet, I could do like an A/B comparison, but they're modeling, you have to model like the room that you're recording in as well, which obviously we don't have. Universal Audio has access to just world-class recording type of studios, and they have plugins that emulate those rooms. I use them actually a lot, like Ocean Way or Capital Chambers, that kind of thing. So it would be hard to do an A/B comparison and really get it even, which is why I chose not to do that in this video. But I have mic'd a cabinet and gone through the aux, and I don't really feel like you sacrifice anything using the aux. I also watched an episode of That Pedal Show where Dan and Mick used the aux in a live recording, and they mic'd the cabinets as well, and they A/B'd them, and they kind of came to the same conclusion, which is interesting because those guys are like anti-digital emulation of anything. But they came to the conclusion it's like, it sounds just as, it's a little different, but it sounds just as good using the aux rather than running a live cabinet and miking it. So first thing that I love about it is how it sounds. I love the range of cabinets and speakers and microphone modeling that's in it. Like say if something is too bright, you've got so many options at your disposal to warm things up. You can use a different microphone. You can make it an off-axis microphone. I didn't even talk about this, but you can put a rug underneath the dampen in the room modeling, and it changes the way that it sounds and feels because some of those frequencies are being absorbed by the rug, right? And so you can make things sound, you can really sculpt it with the different tools that you have beyond just the speaker and the cabinet that you choose. Different EQs and everything. So I really like all those options. It's great if you love to tweak, but it's also really simple if you don't love to tweak. If you want to just go, I know that a Royer 121 and a Shure SM57 sound really good together. Put those two mics on the thing, turn the faders up, dial your amp in, done. Sounds great. Or you can really deep dive if you want to. So that I really love about it. I love the effects that are on it. If you want to just run into an amp and no pedal board or anything, you can get quite a wide range of sounds. Like if you're recording, you can get delays, reverbs, modulation. You can turn the gain on your amp up for drive. Like you can cover a ton of ground with just a guitar, amp, aux. Now you can't do it as well in a live situation because you can't go in and tweak all the things and turn your amp up and down. But if you just want to get some great tracks recorded for any kind of personal projects, you really like the onboard effects give you a ton of flexibility. And then you can use them live as well if you have a TRS switch. So if you incorporate the aux into your live rig, it opens up a lot more functionality to you as far as effects go. You might not need a modulation pedal or an extra reverb pedal on your board because the aux can handle that stuff. Just get yourself a really cheap TRS, 3-button switch, and you're done. Run it to the aux, done. You can bundle it with the cable that goes to your amp because that's probably where you're going to set it anyway. So I love that, the effects. I think that the attenuation on it is really good. When some attenuators don't give you that many options as far as volume. On the aux, I think you have 5 or 6 different volume options. So I use this a lot just with an amp in the room if I'm going to play, and I don't want it to be just crazy loud because tube amps get really loud, especially when you turn them up to their sweet spot. So I can, especially like my late early 2000s 8-Korg, UK AC30 with Celestian Blues. That thing is just insanely loud, but you can use it at a volume that's like nice to listen to and still crank that amp a little bit with the aux, and it sounds good. And for recording, that is really handy as well. Or if you are running it like in church or at a gig and you want the amp, you just don't want so much volume, you have a lot of option for attenuation, which is nice. So that's another really good positive with it. So all of that together, I think, makes it an extremely attractive option. Oh, one other thing I love is that room mic option. Like I said earlier, that really gives you something that sets it apart from using an IR. Okay, things that I don't like so much about it. Connecting to the app can be a little bit of a headache. The way the aux is set up is it creates its own Wi-Fi network. You then connect your computer or your iPad or whatever to it, and then it communicates with the aux. The way that it's supposed to work is you can then connect the aux to your regular Wi-Fi network. So the aux is connected to Wi-Fi, to like your Wi-Fi network in your computer, and as long as they're connected to the same network, they should be able to talk to one another. That works some of the time, but it often disconnects, and you can't find the aux. So when I'm using it with my computer, I almost always just connect straight to the aux's network. And I've seen other users talk about this as well. Like I was watching a video from Rhett Scholl on the aux, and he had the same sort of takeaway. It just doesn't, you don't have that stable connection, network connection when you connect the aux to your Wi-Fi network. So I would guess that's something that could come out with a firmware update. But that's one thing. Another thing about it is if you want to use this as a live rig, it's pretty heavy. I don't know if you noticed in the beginning of this video when I was holding it like this, like you might have seen some beads of sweat start to form. It weighs a lot, but a lot of load boxes do because of the internals that is required to receive the load from the amp and do what that do what you need to do. You can't really get something that's super light that does that kind of a job. And the fact, I'm not for certain because I'm not an engineer, but the fact that you can switch between 4, 8, and 16 ohms, it might require a little bit extra, you know, in there to do that, because not a lot of load boxes do. Usually you have to pick. Usually it's 8 or 16. Sometimes 4 is an option, but I actually have amps in this room that are all 3 different ohmages. So I have some that have a 4 ohm output, some that have an 8, some that have a 16. So having the aux really lets me use it with any amp that I have. The other thing about it is the power connection is pretty bulky as well. So if you wanted to run this again with a live, basically the portability of it isn't as good as other options on the market, but I think it's really built to be a studio tool. I have seen some bands that use it live with their amps, and it is a great option. Like if you're carrying around a 60-pound tube amp, what's another few pounds for the aux, right? And if you're plugging a tube amp in, you can plug the aux in, you're probably going to keep it with your amp. So I don't think it's really a big negative, but it is, you know, there are lighter and more portable options out there. They don't typically do as much, though. The third sort of negative to the aux would be the price. So it is a premium product. It's over $1,000. I'm pretty sure it's currently at that price here in the US. But there are cheaper options that do the same kinds of things that the aux does. One thing I've noticed, though, is not many of them do everything that the aux does. So I do feel like it is well worth the asking price because of how good it sounds and because of everything it can do. But if you just want something to attenuate your amp, there's cheaper options. If you just want something that receives the load and does like an IR output, cheaper options as well. But the aux has a lot of bells and whistles that a lot of other stuff doesn't. Okay, using it with impulse responses. So if you are coming from like Helix or Axe Effects and you have like this library of IRs, or if you're like us and you make your own IRs of the cabinets that you have, it's not that hard to do actually. You might view the lack of being able to load an impulse response into the aux as a negative. I would say that it's not, because it's not really what the aux is meant to do. If you want something to load an IR, there's other options out there that are cheaper, like the 2-Notes Captor X, for example, is something that's less than half the price, I think, and will do an IR, and that might be exactly what you want. Aux does a lot more, but you can use IRs with it. And the way you do that is, if you remember when we were going through the mic options, one of the mic options was direct out. So it didn't do any cabinet or microphone emulation at all. So you can do a direct out and then run that into anything that will load an IR. So that could be, I've used it before with Helix and with Axe Effects. I've used it before running it into Logic. So you can run it into Helix or Axe Effects or any modeler for that matter, and then pull up a cabinet or pull up an IR, and it does it just fine. If you use the like the line out, you wouldn't use the cabinet out. You would use the line out. So you can do that. You can run it into like a recording software and pull up a reverb that loads an IR. Lots of them have that. So you can use your IRs with it. One of the other things you can do with it in a studio setting, which makes it pretty unique in my opinion, is you can use it both with an IR and you can use the mic modeling in it, because you basically have 2 channels of output. So you can run, you know, the left out, you can pan it left and have that direct. Then you can run that into something that's loading an IR. The right out, you can pan it all the way right, the second channel, and you can do the speaker cabinet modeling on that one and run it somewhere else. So you can have an IR on one side and the aux is modeling on the other, and do whatever you want with that. I mean, you have tons of options there to use IRs if you already have a library of impulse responses. You just can't use it like as a standalone with an IR. You have to have something else that'll load the IR with it. Hey, if you have questions about the UA aux, let us know below. We actually have a lot of videos planned with how to use it. One of the things I love to do with the aux is take the Helix, for example. You can use an effects loop in the Helix. You can run the out of the effects loop into your amp, amp to aux back into Helix, and then essentially bring your amp into something like a Helix or an Axe Effects, and then just incorporate your Helix into, or your amp into something bigger, or use modeling and use snapshots and all that kind of stuff. It makes for some really creative rigs. So we can do video content on that down the road. We can show you different amps with it, that kind of thing. Let us know what you'd like to see. Hit up Vintage King, link below. Again, huge thanks to Vintage King. Huge thanks to Kevin for letting us borrow this amp, which, how great does that amp sound? It's good. Tyler, HM30. It's a good one. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. See you in the next one.